Welcome to Owl Have You Know, a podcast from Rice Business. This episode is part of our Flight Path series, where guests share their career journeys and stories of the Rice connections that got them where they are.
On today's episode of Owl Have You Know, we talk with alumni Radu Filip, an immigrant from Romania who quickly found his way to Rice Business. He discusses his belief in giving back not only to Rice, the Houston community, but also his work in aiding the war effort in Ukraine. The energy finance executive recently returned from the war zone. He tells us what he did, what he saw, and what he hopes for in the future. Today on Owl Have You Know, our guest is Radu Filip, professional MBA from 2008. Radu, thank you so much for being with us here today.
My pleasure to be here.
So, there are literally, I was reading your bio, and there are so many incredible things to dig into with you and to discuss that it's just kind of hard to start.
Let's start from somewhere.
Let's start from somewhere. I agree. So you were born and raised in Romania, and you immigrated to the United States with your wife in 2005. And shortly thereafter found your way to Rice. So you started at Rice in 2006, right after you came to the United States. So
Right.
you also, you have a BS and an MS in computer science, and you are with Schlumberger right now. You're one of the directors of finance. So that is your professional.
SLB. We just changed the name to SLB.
Okay, perfect. So we'll call it SLB going forward, and we won't call it oil and gas. We'll call it energy. Cool?
Energy transition. Innovation.
Yes. So that is your professional background. One of the most fascinating things about you, though, is that most recently, in late December of 2022, you went to Ukraine to distribute humanitarian aid to the people of Ukraine through an organization called Elevate Ukraine. So I would love to start with that, since that was the most recent. And you know, I think everybody has this tug to help people, you know, that are going through very challenging and difficult circumstances. But you got on a plane and flew to the middle of a war zone. So tell me about that.
Well, it starts with my desire to be involved and help the Ukrainian people once this phase of the war started last year. And there are many reasons why I wanted to help. As an American, you cannot resonate with what is basically an independence war for Ukraine. So you cannot resonate because we fought an independence war many years ago against a more powerful and professional enemy. We had help back then, if you remember Lafayette and the French who helped us. So basically it's the same situation if you take away the technology and the century and so forth. As a Texan too, you resonate with that, right? You know, think of Mariupol as Alum, right? The last stand that bought time for the army of Ukraine to defend themselves in other parts of the country. And last but not least, as a Romanian too, because I grew up behind the Iron Curtain. My grandparents have been themselves in the Second World War refugees from the same enemy Ukraine is fighting today. When Stalin occupied the Eastern European countries, the Baltics, half of Poland, part of Romania as the result of his agreement with Hitler. So at so many levels, I resonate with the aspiration of freedom and independence of the Ukrainian people, and with the uneven fight against a much greater enemy. So this is the context, and my desire to help using my network, and I have many friends after so many years here in the US. I was introduced to this wonderful group of people in College Station that are primarily, but not limited, from one church there, A&M Church of Christ. For many years, they have been involved with mission trips in Ukraine, primarily helping orphans in Ukraine. So they started their involvement many years ago, like almost 2 decades ago. So obviously when the war started, they already had a network there of who they want to help. So like many other organizations here, they switched towards a humanitarian aid mission. I was very fortunate to get to know them and to join them. So this is the context in which I joined. They formed this particular nonprofit, Elevate Ukraine, a nonprofit, specifically for the purpose of helping Ukraine. They have other humanitarian work done around the world, but this one is specifically for this situation. So this is the context. This is why I wanted to help. In December, by December, so the nonprofit started in August. It was when it was formed and all that, and started to raise funds. By the fall, we already managed to ship an air cargo of medical first aid kits. And then by early December, we were able to deliver our first ship container, 40-foot container filled to the brim with medical supplies, anything from medical beds, mattresses, walkers, wheelchairs, surgery equipment, syringes, anything that a hospital would need. So it was a good opportunity to be there for the purpose of delivering this aid. And we delivered this to Dnipro, the city that unfortunately has been in the news yesterday with that apartment building indiscriminately bombed. So that
My
was the city
grandfather
where I
was
was there
born
in
there,
December.
actually. My grandfather was born there. That's where he was from. So I
Mhm.
have a
Yeah,
connection as
well,
well.
okay. I'm glad to hear that, wonderful people over there. So, and from there, the volunteers and the various organizations who partner with in Ukraine, they further distributed this aid to various places, hospitals in different cities, primarily in East Ukraine. So that was the reason why I went there. And since I was there, the volunteers, the partners we have there, thought it would be very useful if they would show me more than just I can see in one city. So thanks to their involvement and effort and time, I have a chance to visit quite a few cities in East Ukraine. Kharkiv, Chuguyev, I've been to Izium, which was just liberated 2 months prior in
Yes.
the Kharkiv counteroffensive. That was the closest I've been to the front line, about 20 miles. Sumy in the north, Poltava, and Kiev.
So what
So
is it like
that
on
in
the
total it's
ground
about
there?
2,000.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Surreal. It's absolutely surreal. So in throughout Ukraine, even in Kiev, you can see the scars of the fighting that took place in its outskirts, even though the enemy is far away now from Kiev. In these cities close to the front line, like Kharkiv is the second largest city in Ukraine, about 1.5 million people before the war. There is no one single building I have seen that doesn't have plywood in places of windows. That doesn't have some, facade damage. Not to mention there are many buildings that are much, much worse destroyed. In the same time, cities like Izium that has been through the front line, utter destruction. There is no one single building standing whole. Schools, playgrounds, churches, apartment buildings, hospitals, absolutely everything destroyed. It's incredible. I mean, it's one thing to see it on TV, when you see it with your own eyes, when you see that, you know, places where people actually unfortunately died. It's terrifying. Contrast to that is the attitude of the people. Wonderful people, all brave in the face of this utter destruction. All with a huge fighting spirit, with a huge desire to be free, independent, and make their own decisions as a country and as a nation. One other thing I wanted to add here: when we hear about East Ukraine and you debate here in the United States, in that school, at work, at university, you always hear about East Ukraine is primarily Russian speaking, Western Ukraine is primarily Ukrainian speaking. It makes no difference once you're there. All the volunteers I've been there are native Russian speakers, and all of them said, yes, my language is Russian, but my country is Ukraine, and I don't want to live in Russia, I want to live in Ukraine. So this unity, this bravery, this fighting spirit in the people, it's absolutely amazing, and it's a huge contrast with the destruction I've seen.
So if people listening would want to get involved in the efforts with Elevate Ukraine, how can they get involved with this organization?
There are multiple ways anybody who wants to help can get involved. Perhaps the simplest way to involve is to make a donation. We have a donate button on elevatedcrane.org. I was invited to join the board of directors, so I serve in the board of directors. Everybody there has a full-time job and is doing this for completely voluntary, withdraw no compensation, no benefit, no material benefit from belonging here. So I can attest that the money will go for aid. The money will go to pay for some of the shipping and logistics of this aid. That we receive, some of this aid, we receive it as goods from our partner organizations, right? So then there is just the cost, like for the case of the container, it was the cost of shipping and logistics, right? But also a lot of people can get involved if they help us partner with our organizations here that would like to help. I don't know how and with whom. This was my challenge in the beginning. The first 2 months of the war was I want to help, but I don't know any organization. I don't know where to go. Yes, I made some monetary donation to a charity I found in the news, but it felt like I was not doing enough. So those who want to involve more, please contact me directly. And if you can help us make a connection with our organization, could be a church, could be a nonprofit, could be a private person, could be anybody. We'll be glad to talk and explore how we can partner to maximize our aid. We have this organization has quite a wide network in Ukraine of in different cities. So depending on the needs, depending what various people can help with, or the organizations they know or can introduce us to can help with, we can do a lot beyond just donations.
And what is the best way to get in touch with you?
My email and phone number.
Okay.
We have so elevated. It's radu.filip@elevatedcrane.org.
Perfect. So my next question is, you're married, and when you told your wife you're going to go to Ukraine in the middle of, a war, what was her reaction?
That's a very good question. Obviously, my family was worried, and not only my family. I have many good and close friends who knew about these plans, and they were all worried. Obviously, my family and my wife, on the forefront of this. For me, I apply here principles I've learned in the business school, and I have learned it in the business profession, which is manage risk, mitigate risk, and minimize it so you can make bold, calculated risks. So it was all about risk management in the end. The time frame when I went, it was a time frame when we adjust the timing. So then it was a period of less intense bombing in the cities as it was like the month before. I knew I'm gonna be in good hands there, volunteers there who help, who know, the right and safe places to be. We spend a lot of time on the road. And you're a bit safer when you're in the middle of nowhere than in a city. But there was a risk. And so my wife understood that our desire to help, and she knew that if we can manage the risk and just, live with it for a little while, it's manageable. But your question made me think about something else, right? Think about all the families there that live with this risk day in and day out, right? I was under this risk for like a couple of days. But it's amazing there how people of Ukraine learn to live with this and not be afraid anymore. I was absolutely amazed. The first air raid alarm, that when you hear those sirens starting to sound, you feel the vibration in your bones.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a sound that, again, you may have heard it in the news and so, but when you hear it with your own ears, it's different. And most of the people were not running scared to the shelter. Most of the people said, we've been living with this every day for the last 8 months. By the time I was there, it was 8 months. We're not afraid anymore. Yes, there is a risk. There is a possibility that the fate, may be not good for us today, but we're not afraid. And that kind of bravery and defiance in front of this,
And
evil
resolve.
and the resolve. again, it motivated me to say, look, if they're not afraid, I should not be afraid be either. I'm among them. I'm experiencing what they're experiencing. And communication back home every day was a key to let know family and close friends that I'm good, where I am, where I'm going. It was a bit tough one day when the central Kyiv was bombed and I was there in a hotel. I was not impacted in any way, but the power was cut off and I could not text home for like about 6 hours that I'm safe.
Wow.
That perhaps was the most dramatic moment of this. But my family, my friends knew that I want to help, knew about my desire, and they all supported me. I could not have done this without the support of my family and my close friends.
So, do you have plans to go back?
I like to go back if the opportunity appears and there is a good reason to go back. If we can organize together another container or two of aid, and if it's a good reason to be there, I would like to go back. I made new friends over there. I met wonderful people of all kinds of professions and who are all helping in this effort. And it's just great to be among these people and just be with them and feel their spirit and their hopes.
Well, and
So
one of the
for
things to
that reason
also
alone,
one of the things also is that I think that looking ahead, and one of the other things that we learned in business school, other than risk management, is also strategic planning. So, if they are victorious in this war, it's going to take a whole lot of resources to build that country back up to where it was because it has been decimated.
you're absolutely right. I mean, the amount of destruction varies by region, but is very significant in a very large parts of the country. And yes, there will be so much work to do there for years to come beyond this war.
Yes. And so let's segue, because you had a really great one about why you decided to go, because it's what you learned in business school. So let's travel back to rice from Ukraine. And I would love for you to tell me, why did you choose rice? And you certainly, is this something that you wanted to do while you were still in Romania before you set foot in the United States? Is this something that was a plan for you, or was this something that came to be once you immigrated here from Romania?
Well, basically all of the above. um, so, look, I never heard of rice before I set foot to Houston. And perhaps in all this little story, that saying by General Eisenhower applies, which says, plans are useless, but planning is indispensable, right? So going a bit further back in time, growing behind the Iron Curtain, my country managed to break free when I was 14, so I was old enough to remember. Growing behind the Iron Curtain, I grew up with the desire of the forbidden fruit, which was the United States, the arch enemy of the Eastern Bloc, right? So I always have a desire to come to America, but it was not defined in any way. It was just a desire. And as I grew up, as I started to, after we became a free country, and started to go to high school and college, those thoughts about going to America started to articulate more and more, right? They become more refined. I chose to work to get degrees in computer science. One reason that my mom was a software developer, software engineer, so there was a lot of family influence there, being around computers before many other people in Romania could have seen a computer. But also because at the time, in mid-90s, IT was the only industry with global exposure. And I always have the desire to see the big picture and to do things at a large scale. So obviously that was a natural choice for me. And while I started my profession as an IT engineer, my thoughts developed further, and I said, okay, I want to go to work in the management of a large American global company. That was my dream. That was my American dream. So obviously, to move from IT to more let's call it mainstream management, the MBA was the key. And I immigrated to the United States as an IT engineer. I was hired by a company called 3D Geo, which was in seismic processing. This is a sub-segment of the industry, very upstream oil and gas, on those geophysicists that are trying to understand the layers of the earth. So exploration companies know where to take the risk to drill.
Right.
And as soon as I set foot in Houston in October 2005, I started to look also for MBA options. At the time, Rice University just announced their evening professional program, because I have to work full time with this company that brought me here, so I could not be a daytime student.
Juggle.
And I also happened to know from yes, and also I knew from my hometown in Yash, which is a big academic city. I knew a professor, Mr. Jerry Ramey, professor of management from Eastern Oregon University, who came there as a Fulbright scholar. So I reached out to him and said, "What's the best MBA program in Houston?" He said, "Go to Rice." That's how I learned about Rice.
It's as simple as that.
So I went
Done.
to Rice. Well, somehow it worked, right? I went to the information session. I still have somewhere here in the library the tag with saying Radu Filip, prospective student.
Your name tag, you still have that? That's great.
I applied, I interviewed. Luckily for me, I was admitted. And yes, I did my MBA 2 years, evening, weekends, and summer while I worked for that seismic company that brought me here.
And then you were also awarded the Jones Citizen Award for Excellence, and you also co-founded the Houston chapter of Women's Masters Network. Was that at the same time while you were in? I mean, is there like what
Yes.
have you not done?
Yes.
Like there's. So tell me about that.
Well, I again, when you come to America, you come armed with, again, will to succeed. You realize the chances that this country can give you if you are open and work hard and take risks and chances. So yes, the Jones Award was for my grades. I managed to get good grades working on many project assignments, sometimes individual, sometimes with my classmates. So yes, I'm thankful for that. The Women Master Network is a story into itself. So I was serving in a student alumni committee, and I had a colleague, a lady, Tony Alpin, from the daytime student program. At the beginning of the second year, when those student clubs have a day where they try to recruit memberships, I stopped by her booth for Women Master Network. But back then it had a different name, but let's stick with this, to say hi to her. And in the middle of few women students, MBA students, and herself, she dared me to join.
She dared
and
you.
I said,
Ooh,
okay.
That's bold.
Yes. Yeah, she is bold, and professional women are very bold because they have so many other obstacles they have to overcome. So I said, okay, I take the challenge, but I'll not be a figurehead just for the statistics of the organization. I get involved because when I get involved somewhere, I like to make a difference. So that's how I joined the university chapter, and then we all graduated, and we co-founded the Houston chapter together with Women MBA from University of Houston and a few other universities in Texas. And I've been involved over the years in subcommittees, committees. There is one other caveat there. Later, I end up having 3 girls. So I have 3 kids, I have 3 girls. So my mission in Women Master Network changed because every single bit that I can help to improve the prospects of women advancing in their career in the professional field, down the road, hopefully they'll help my girls when they'll be grown up too. So it all points
It wasn't
in
a
the same
coincidence.
direction.
It wasn't a coincidence, was it?
Yeah.
So how old are your girls?
14, 11 and a half, and 10. So 8th grade, 6th grade, and 4th grade.
So do they speak your native language? Do they speak Romanian?
They do. In our family, we travel a lot. So as each of them reach the age of 6, so staggered, we start sending them to Europe to grandparents to spend summer with grandparents, which is important to develop the bonds. They are so lucky all the 4 grandparents are alive and they can take them to trips and see around. So we want that family bond to develop. But grandparents also don't speak English. So when you live 2 months in another country, and kids
Forced.
learn languages very fast. Yes, they are forced by circumstances to learn the language, and they are learning very fast. And for me, it's important they speak Romanian because, being Romanian European is our contribution to America's melting pot and is my girls' heritage here, right? They're all born and raised here in Texas, but it's important to understand through family what they're contributing to all this diversity that makes America great.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So tell me about your time at Rice, because you also got involved with the Baker Institute. You really soaked in and took advantage of every opportunity during your time at the university. So tell me about your involvement with Baker.
Well, though Baker Institute as a building is sitting right across Jones School of Business
Yes.
within the Rice campus.
Proximity is
And
definitely
actually,
important.
yeah, proximity is important for one thing. The second thing there is that the Rice Business School had some events hosted in the aula of the James Baker Institute. So that's when I first set foot in it. And then I was familiar with the work that Mr. James Baker III did, the former Secretary of State, because he was instrumental in the negotiations with the Soviet Union when Soviet Union was losing the Cold War for the reunification of Germany, and more broadly speaking, for the transition in former Eastern Europe. So I knew of him, even from Romania, I knew of him and his contribution to this. And then I was just I didn't know that he has a think tank before I came here. So when discovering that, such a prominent American statesman had a think tank and is right across my school, it was a natural attraction. I could not get involved. And getting involved is very flexible, right? You can choose what events you want to attend or not attend. You can choose what committees you want to serve or not to serve. And my involvement, the intensity of my involvement, evolved over the years with, before I had kids, after I had kids, the stages in the school cycle of my kids and so forth. It was not constant the same intensity, but it's a great opportunity. And one thing I like about the Baker Institute a lot is that, in my opinion, it is a very intellectual, elevated, and civilized way to discuss politics, because you focus on policies. You don't focus on, the emotional part of politics that happens through, ads during the campaign or happens through memes on the internet and so forth. No, it's a much more intellectual, elevated way to discuss policy instead of politics. So for me, it's a natural fit to be there and be among people with like-minded people and be among these statesmen who had such a contribution to this country.
And to many countries. He was quite the statesman
To me, yeah.
to many countries. So if let's talk about how it is to be an international student at Rice, because even though you immigrated here and you're an American, your roots and your home country, is Romania, but now you're an American. So if there are international students that are considering coming to Rice, can you shed a little light on what it would be like for them and speak about the diversity that Rice offers?
Absolutely. So I was amazed from the beginning to discover that just in my class, about more than a quarter of the class were international students from various continents. Well, not as many Europeans, but there were students from everywhere, from Asia, from Latin America, from Africa. And this diversity is amazing because you discover how different life experiences and then work experiences in different cultures in the world, how they generate multiple perspectives in approaching the same problem, whatever is a business problem or an organizational problem. So I was amazed by that. I had some expectations about American universities in general being very open to to international students, to this diversity of opinions and experiences and perspectives. So it was not a complete surprise, but I was still surprised and impressed seeing it to what degree it manifested. The greatest challenge that international students face are twofold. One is that when you come here and start university right away, there are many aspects of American educational culture that you may not be familiar with. And for example, the fact that you start the first year and immediately the recruiting session starts for the next summer internships. Right?
Yep.
In America here, we plan things so far out, but there was not a reflex for me or a way of thinking when I came here. So it's a lot of catch up things that American students know that normally happens in the progression of the academic year. As an international student, you don't know, and you learn along the way very fast, and you have to catch up and you have to understand. If you have a chance to do high school here, then you are a bit better prepared for those things. Second is the cultural aspect, right? There is a cultural shock coming to America. If you travel before or if you have been exposed to working with Americans before, again, helps. But it is a cultural shock, and cultural shock is not negative or positive. It is what it is, right?
Right.
So you need to be prepared for it, right? And especially in Texas, where you have to drive anywhere. So if you don't have a car, you are having a very difficult life as a student, even to buy groceries, for example. Right?
Yes, you're a bit at a
I never had a car.
disadvantage.
Right. I mean, I never had a car or a driving license before I came to the United States, right? So it's this cultural shock. And the best way to mitigate the cultural shock is to bond and be open and make American friends that they can guide you very quickly and they can, help you be immersed into this culture here. And the third aspect, as an international student, is the fact that many companies, especially large companies, have a policy where they do not sponsor for a work visa or for a green card, and this oftentimes puts international students at a disadvantage. Now there are again ways to mitigate that. Rice University, if I understand correctly, being an elite university, and there is some classification with the U.S. government, the right to work after graduation it's as long as 3 years, as opposed to the standard 1 year, right? So that is a way this is mitigated. But the very fact that our country does not have a formally merit-based defined immigration system where you can apply for yourself to come here puts these students at a disadvantage. There are ways to go around, there are ways to deal with this challenge. And it's a bit unfair on the international students, but we have to put our house in order. But they will face this challenge. I was very fortunate that the company that brought me here, and while I did the student, they sponsored me for a green card. So I owe this to them for sponsoring me. And they knew that sponsoring me, they knew that once I finish Rice, I'd most likely leave and work somewhere else. But it made the whole difference in the world that when I went to interview, I could say, don't worry, I have the right to work here.
Right.
Over the years, I remain involved with the Rice University and the International Student Alumni Board. Because again, I think it's important, exactly what we're talking here, to share from my experience with the incoming international students and talk about the exact same things we covered here in this discussion. And I always encourage them, said, look, it's going to be a bit harder, but where there is a will, there is a way, and the best place to show resolve and determination and succeed despite all the hardship, the best place for that is America. So. And it's interesting because I remember encouraging international students during the Great Recession, which was the worst time for an international student to be here.
Right.
Companies were not hiring anybody, not only international students and so forth. So encouraging my younger colleagues there was so important. And it happens that later on, some of them, Rice is a good school. Eventually, most of them made it. Some of them now serve alongside with me in this International Student Alumni Board as alumni. So now we advise the new students. He said, look, for example, there is a colleague, Jesus, I know from Oceaneering, he said, Jesus was in your situation, this very situation. And look, he made it, we made it, you made it too.
Where there's a will, there's a way, and it's worth it. Three W's. 3 W's.
Yeah.
So you did come to Rice and you were in IT and you transitioned into energy finance. So tell me about that and how that came to be. And I know that you were at Cameron, that was then acquired by SLB. We call it SLB now, right? Schlumberger. So tell me how you made that transition from one industry. I mean, you really pivoted your career.
I did, and everybody's career is different. And so in my case, the MBA was the hinge, was the pivot that allowed me to move from a pure IT field to the world of corporate finance, right? I could not have done without it. If somebody else, like some of my esteemed colleagues that have a bachelor in accounting or finance or tax, they don't need the same hinge. But in my case, it was absolutely required. So I wanted to do this pivot because in the end, the business is run based on business performance, which is numbers, earnings per share, market share, profit margins, and so forth. So I wanted to be in the finance world because I'm closer to where a business is run. But in reality, I never completely quit the IT field. So I'm somewhere in the intersection of both. Just like you mentioned earlier, I am a proud naturalized Texan and American citizen, but I retain the Romanian and EU citizenship. So same thing in my career. I work in, let's call it broadly corporate finance, could be finance hubs, could be our aspect of corporate finance, but I have an IT background that I apply in my finance work every day. Because of my career, I started late. I could not have been an accountant. I could not have had the accounting controllership track because I didn't do my 5 years of audit with like PwC and Deloitte and those.
Right.
But I could apply the principles of IT operations, which is about efficiencies, process, scalability. And I can apply those principles and those even technologies now to the field of finance to drive efficiency in the finance world. Improving the quality of our financial statement, decreasing the cost, increasing the efficiency, simplifying processes, and so forth. So my work in corporate finance is less accounting in nature, is more around efficiencies in optimization and transformation in finance, to which I apply all the experience from the technology space.
And so tell me, because now you're a dual citizen is in IT and in finance, right? So that's great. You've got dual citizenships in both. So tell me,
Right.
How do you see the energy finance space evolving, especially since we are in the midst of an energy transition? So tell me how you see the future of energy finance, especially here in Houston.
Right. This is a topic that was discussed at length during the last RISE Finance Energy Summit, which is a one-day summit that takes place at the Jones School of Business every year in the month of November. So this topic was actually the main topic last November. We are in the middle of energy transition. There is no question about it. Countries around the world, they enact policies towards clean energy. You have the industry, especially the auto industry, switching investments from internal combustion engine to electric. You see investments in grids, in electric charging stations. There is no doubt that there is a transition. Now, we have to remember that this kind of transitions takes a lot of time. They're not like flipping the fingers. Put it this way, the automobile was invented in very late 19th century. And by mid-20th centuries, you still have in various parts of the world a mix of automobile and horse-driven vehicles, right? The transition to automobile didn't happen on horse, right? Those two coexisted in various proportions. So the same thing will happen with electric vehicles, which I'm focusing on electric vehicles because 70% of the hydrocarbon extracted, primarily oil, goes to fuels. So fuels means transportation. Therefore, that's why electric vehicles are so central to this energy mix and transition. So the transition is happening. Now, what is interesting in this space of renewables and in new energy is that it's there are a lot of ideas, there are a lot of technologies. It's not clear which technology is emerging. There is a lot of activity, innovations, inventions, startups who come with different approaches. So it's a very active space from an innovation point of view. But there are no cleaner clear winners yet on like a mainstream type of technology or a standard. And because of that, the investment profiles are very evolving too, to the point or where, we don't know exactly what capital allocation model would work, what investment profile would work, what kind of expectation we should have, and so forth. So it's all work in progress, if I can summarize it like this. Now, this is the opportunity that the legacy big oil and gas companies can bring to the table in this transition if they are smart to embrace it. And I work for a company who's very smart and they fully embrace it. The thing about oil exploration is very complex. And if you take out the hydrocarbon and the technology to extract it, oil exploration is a lot of risk management, right? Again, in the oil exploration, you don't know which exploration is going to yield a discovery or not, and how big the reservoir is versus estimate and so forth. So the large established energy companies, they have a lot of expertise with dealing and managing the risks and the uncertainties that the transition towards clean energy entails.
Yeah, it's definitely going to take some time, and I agree with you that it's going to be multiple innovations and multiple ways of having energy, different types for the foreseeable future, because it is a decades-long process to switch.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen.
Yeah. So
overnight.
in this context of the big established energy companies now embracing this in government, so they apply all these lessons of risk management from the past, and the finance function evolves with that, right? So I see because you're asking about the finance function in energy, right? It is really about being at the forefront of exploring and trying to discern from this less than crystal clear future what is the best course of action. So finance can steer a lot these companies in the direction of how we make clean energy profitable, how we generate revenue streams, how we manage. Do we have cycles? We don't have cycles. How that looks like, and so forth.
So the other thing I wanted to ask you is it is a new year, and so I'm wondering what goals you have for yourself for this year.
I have so my primary goal is to continue to grow and acquire experience at SLB. With the work I'm doing, taking up more responsibilities, working on significant projects and programs that advance the company's performance, that advance the company on this road towards energy innovation. So career-wise, obviously. The second objective I have is to continue to help and find more ways to help the people of Ukraine through the Elevate Ukraine, a nonprofit I serve into. And the third objective I have is to be able to also manage to have time for my family and be around my family, be around my kids, and help them grow. Because I'm of the school of thought that you cannot outsource 100% of your kids' education and development to the school system, no matter how well the school system is funded. There is a role parents play. Review homeworks with them, talk with them, teach them things the school don't teach them, and so forth. So I will sum up this as my 3 objectives for the year on the personal side.
Do you have hopes of one or all 3 of your daughters of attending Rice? Because now they do have an undergraduate program. I'm just putting that out there.
I obviously I do as a Rice owl that I am. Since they were small, maybe since they were 5 to 6 years old, we always bring them to Rice on the homecoming in
Weekend.
the fall.
Yes.
On the homecoming weekend, we always go there on a Saturday and spend the full Saturday in the campus, visiting various buildings, meeting with friends and colleagues. We were small, they were playing hide and seek inside the Fondren Library.
Oh, nice.
Please don't
I bet
tell
there's
this
lots of
anywhere.
good places to hide in there for sure.
Absolutely, exactly. I always take them to my business school. We always find an empty classroom, and they choose a topic that they for fun want to present on the whiteboard. So for me, as a parent, as an alumni, expose them to the university setting. They see students even in the weekend studying, doing their homework. So we planted those seeds, and they're all excited about rice, and they always ask me, "I want to go rice next time," and so forth. So I hope that they will choose rice one day.
Well, I hope the same for my children as well. So fingers crossed on both of our behalfs. Well, Radu, it's been
Absolutely.
an absolute.
Now, other thing I want to add, when we have the chance, we also expose them to other academic. For example, we've been to a vacation in California. We spent a few days in Silicon Valley, and I take them to a tour of the Stanford campus. They saw the first computer where Google search engine was first running and that kind of stuff. So it's important for me that they understand the academic world and the competition there that comes after the K-12 cycle.
But Rice is way better than Stanford. Come on.
Of course, yes. But they need a data point to be able to contrast and compare and reach the same conclusion.
I mean, yes, fair. That's fair to say. But yeah, Rice trumps Stanford, in my opinion. So, and plus, they'd be close to home with mom and dad, right? If they stayed in Houston.
Right. That's another soft advantage there. Yes.
Well, Radu, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk with you today, and we so appreciate your time. And again, mention one more time how people can get involved with aid to Ukraine.
Thank you. It was a pleasure for me as well. The best way to involve is either to make a donation or to contact me, Elevate Ukraine, in one word, elevateukraine.org. Okay.
And I would love for you to keep us posted if you're planning another trip. Would love to circle back around with you and have you back on the program.
Absolutely. I really appreciate that. And thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks for listening. This has been I'll Have You Know, a production of Rice Business. You can find more information about our guests, hosts, and announcements on our website, business.rice.edu. Please subscribe and leave a rating wherever you find your favorite podcasts. We'd love to hear what you think. The hosts of I'll Have You Know are myself, Maya Pomroy, and Scott Gale.